On April 7, 1992, a grim discovery surfaced in Sarasota County in the backyard pool of a quiet home at 4580 Gallup Avenue. Inside a plastic garbage can, floating just beneath the water's surface, was the body of Cindy Rogers. Investigators quickly determined this was no accident. Cindy had been the victim of homicide. What made the discovery even more disturbing was the timeline. Cindy hadn't been seen in nearly a year. The last confirmed sighting placed her at the same residence where she had been living at the time, and where she was reportedly preparing to move out. Forensic evidence told a chilling story. Cindy had been dead for a long time, far longer than the pool could explain. Her remains showed that she had not recently died there. Instead, her body had been kept elsewhere and only placed into the pool shortly before it was found. On February 6, 2007, a chilling discovery was made in a wooded area along Ashton Court in Sarasota. Buried in a shallow grave were the skeletal remains of an unidentified woman. Her identity and the circumstances of her death, a complete mystery. For years, the case went cold. It wasn't until November 2022 that investigators with the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, working alongside DNA Labs International Incorporated, revisited the evidence using modern advances in DNA testing and genetic genealogy. What once seemed unsolvable finally had a name. The victim was identified as 39-year-old Jeana Lynn Burrus. But the identification raised troubling questions. Jeana had never been reported missing. No missing persons report, no urgent search. For years, her absence went unnoticed, leaving investigators with little to trace and no clear timeline of when or how her life ended. Even with her name restored, the circumstances of Jeana's death remain unresolved. The silence surrounding her disappearance continues to haunt the case. Boca Raton, July 18, 2003. A landlord from a home on 665 East Jeffrey Street reported a strong foul odor coming from the front of the property. When he went to investigate, he noticed something out of place. A sealed garbage bag hidden behind the front bushes, partially covered by debris. Officers were dispatched to the scene. After a brief inspection, Boca Raton Fire Rescue was called in to assist. As the bag was carefully opened, officers were met with the grim reality. Inside were human remains. The victim was soon identified as 19-year-old Maria Jackson. She had been reported missing weeks earlier on June 30th by the Coral Springs Police Department. Investigators later determined her body had likely been placed there no later than July 3rd. Maria worked at a Miami club called Gold Rush. She performed there under the stage name Dynasty. On June 27th at 1:47 a.m., surveillance showed Maria making a purchase at a Walmart in Coral Springs. She returned to her apartment afterward with her belongings intact. That same night, her brother spoke to her by phone around 1:30. Maria told him she was getting ready to go to work. No one is known to have spoken to her after that call. Investigators found no signs of a struggle inside her apartment. Her car, a green BMW, was still parked outside the apartment complex. There was no indication she had left voluntarily. There was no evidence showing where she went after returning home from Walmart. At some point after telling her brother she was heading to work, Maria Jackson vanished, only to be found weeks later, concealed, just feet from a quiet residential street. On Sunday evening, April 14, 1996, Boca Raton police received a call about a possible death at a home on Northeast 5th Avenue. When officers arrived, they found 32-year-old Julie Wills. She was dead on the kitchen floor. Police spoke with Stephen Flacco. He told officers he and Julie had attended a party together on Friday, April 12th. Around 11 p.m., Julie left the party alone. she drove herself home. Flacco said he tried calling Julie on Sunday evening. He also paged her several times. When she didn't respond, he went to her house. Flacco said he knocked on the front door. There was no answer. He walked to the back of the house. That's when he noticed Julie's dog was loose. He told officers that was not normal. Flacco looked through the sliding glass doors. It was dark. He couldn't see inside. He went back to his car and got a flashlight. When he returned to the backyard and shined the light inside, he saw a body on the floor. Flacco ran to a neighbor's house and told them to call police. He then went back, broke the sliding glass door, and entered the home. Julie Wills was dead in the kitchen. Based on the evidence, detectives believe Julie was killed late Friday night or early Saturday morning, sometime after she returned home from the party. Investigators conducted an extensive investigation. They interviewed family, friends, co-workers, and acquaintances. They examined physical and forensic evidence. They reviewed phone records. But despite those efforts, the case eventually went cold. But it's never been forgotten. Not by the Boca Raton police, and not by Julie Wills' family. In the early morning hours of March 28, 1966, a break-in turned into a disappearance. It was around 4:50 a.m. The location was 1101 88th Street in Surfside, Florida. An intruder entered the Goldman family home. He was described as a white male in his early 50s, about 5'8" or 9", between 180 and 200 pounds. The man demanded money. He tied up Daniel Goldman's parents. Then he told them to gather $25,000. It was ransom. Their son's life depended on it. The intruder left the house with 17-year-old Daniel Jess Goldman. He never contacted the family again. No ransom call, no note, no proof of life. Daniel was never seen or heard from again. Investigators believe foul play occurred. However, Daniel's remains have never been recovered. Years later, a suspect was identified in connection with the kidnapping. That individual is now deceased. Daniel Goldman's case remains open. On Sunday, August 17, 1975, Esmeralda Gordon was found dead near a rock pit in southwest Miami-Dade County. She was 24 years old. Her body was discovered around 2:50 p.m. Earlier that morning, Esmeralda had left her home at 691 Northeast 69th Street in Miami. She told others she was going to check out garage sales. The listings had been printed in the newspaper. At some point, Esmeralda returned home. She then left again. This time, she was headed to JCPenney to go shopping. She was never seen or heard from after that. Hours later, her body was found near the rock pit. 2 days later, investigators located her car, a 1972 Chevrolet Vega. The vehicle was parked inside a parking garage near Birdines at the 163rd Street Shopping Center. How Esmeralda Gordon ended up miles away from her plans remains unanswered. On Tuesday morning, April 25, 1972, a shocking discovery was made off the coast of Belleair Shores. It was around 6:30 a.m. A 15-year-old boy was surfing near 7th Street when he saw a body in the water. The victim was a woman. She was nude. She had been decapitated. Her body had between 10 and 12 pounds of weights tied to it, likely to keep it submerged. The head was never recovered. An autopsy revealed no identifiable scars or tattoos, no immediate clues to her identity. For decades, the case remained unsolved. In 2021, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office turned to new technology for help. They partnered with Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA technology company based in Virginia. investigators used a process called DNA phenotyping. This technique analyzes DNA to predict physical appearance and ancestry. Using Parabon's snapshot DNA phenotyping service, scientists generated new investigative leads. From the DNA evidence, they created predictions for the woman's ancestry, eye color, hair color, skin tone, freckles, and face shape. Those traits were combined to produce composite images. One showed what she may have looked like around age 25. Another depicted her at about age 45. Investigators stress that these images are scientific estimates. They're not exact likenesses. Still, more than 40 years later, the technology offered something the case had long lacked: a face to go with the mystery. Michel, a native of Haiti, was found shot to death inside her daughter's home in Winter Haven. The address was on Sandpine Trail. She was last seen alive on December 11, 2003 at 10:40 a.m. She was babysitting her granddaughter while her daughter ran errands. When her daughter returned home at 12:15 p.m., she made a horrifying discovery. Marie had been shot once in the head. She was dead. Her granddaughter was locked inside a bedroom. She was unharmed. Marie had come to Polk County on December 5th to visit her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend. She planned to stay for 2 weeks. Investigators found no signs of forced entry. Nothing in the home appeared to be missing. The case remains a haunting mystery. Michel was killed in a place that should have been safe, inside her own family's home. On April 18, 1980, deputies responded to a call at the Lake Apopka Canal in Magnolia Park, Orlando. They found a body in the water. The victim was Pam McIntosh. She had died from blunt force trauma. Just days later, on April 22nd, deputies returned to the same canal in Magnolia Park. Another body was found. This victim was Randy Belvin. Randy had last been seen by his brother on April 19th, around 1 a.m. He died from a gunshot wound. Randy and Pam McIntosh knew each other. Both deaths happened at the same location, within days of one another, and both cases remain part of the same unsolved mystery. On May 2nd, 1979, a grim discovery was made along Interstate 75 near Webster, Florida. A passerby found skeletal remains in a wooded median strip just north of exit 309. The victim was 19-year-old Virginia Mary Ries. Virginia had last been seen leaving her mother's home in Punta Gorda. She was with her boyfriend at the time. Her boyfriend dropped her off at the intersection of Interstate 75 and Bush Boulevard in Tampa. From there, Virginia planned to hitchhike back to Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. She was serving in the Air Force at the time. But she never made it home. The autopsy confirmed she had been stabbed. Her death was ruled a homicide. On November 25, 2004, 76-year-old Charles Huff was reported missing from his home at 3971 Laurel Branch Court in Lakeland, Florida. Polk County deputies searched the Green Swamp Management area. They believed Mr. Huff may have gone there to hunt. During the search, deputies found his white Mazda truck. It was in the Sumter County section of the management area. Despite an extensive search and years of investigation, Charles Huff was never found. In 2010, he was officially presumed dead. His disappearance remains unsolved. On July 23, 2021, 38-year-old Vickie Lee Van Horn checked herself out of the Villages Regional Hospital in Florida. She left against medical advice. She said she was going to have a cigarette. She was last seen walking out of the hospital parking lot. Vickie has not been seen since. At the time, she was wearing a teal shirt, a blue sweater, black yoga pants, and pink flip-flops. She's about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs around 114 pounds. She has brown blonde hair. Vickie also has a tattoo on her right shoulder blade. It's a heart. Her disappearance remains a mystery. On August 31st, 2004, around 8:30 p.m., Susan Perkins and a friend were working in a salon on Maitland Avenue. They were tinting windows when a masked man entered. He was armed with a rifle. The suspect forced Susan and the other woman into Susan's red Ford Focus. He made them drive to the Washington Mutual Bank at 500 East Altamont Drive. Once there, he forced Susan to withdraw money from her own account at the drive-thru ATM. Then the suspect ordered both women out of the car and into the trunk. While the suspect was leaving the bank, the victims managed to use the emergency release handle inside the trunk. They jumped out. Susan tried to escape. She struck her head on the pavement. Her injuries were fatal. The suspect was described as a black male of medium build. He wore a mask and a long-sleeve military-style jacket. Witnesses also said he may have smelled like motor oil. Susan Perkins' death remains a tragic, violent reminder of how quickly an ordinary night can turn deadly. On Saturday, December 9th, 2006, at about 6:30 a.m., the Gainesville Fire Department responded to a house fire at 1715 Northwest 32nd Place. After the flames were put out, firefighters searched the rubble. They found 2 bodies. One was an adult. The other was a child. The victims were identified as Heather Radcliff and her daughter Kira. Evidence at the scene showed something chilling. Heather and Kira were already dead before the fire began. Investigators determined the fire was intentionally set. It was used to cover up a murder. Officer Scott Baird was killed in the early morning hours of February 12, 2001. He was responding to a call about an object blocking the road. The location was the 1900 block of Northwest 16th Terrace. When Officer Baird arrived, he saw a large metal batting cage blocking the street. He turned on his emergency lights, then he called for backup to help move the cage. While he waited, a car approached. It was being driven by a 17-year-old male. The car hit the batting cage. The cage was thrown into the road and struck Officer Baird. He died from the impact. He was 23 years old. Detectives immediately began investigating who placed the batting cage in the road. They believe players from a rival baseball team at Gainesville High School were responsible. No arrests have been made. Officer Scott Baird's death remains an unsolved tragedy. On Thursday, December 1st, 1994, at 12:45 a.m., a fire was reported at a home on 1031 Southeast 3rd Avenue. The residence belonged to Treva Gernannt, 88, and Emily Wallace, 74. Firefighters arrived and fought the blaze. The house was heavily damaged. It was ransacked by the fire and the efforts to put it out. After the flames were controlled, crews searched the home. They found both women deceased in their bedrooms. The fire is believed to have started in the attic. The gas heater exhaust reportedly ignited the 2x4s in the roof. The roof collapsed onto the victims. Both women were taken to the medical examiner. Treva Gernannt was found to have stab wounds to her neck. Emily Wallace was last seen alive at church on November 30th at 9:30 p.m. Treva Gernannt had stayed home from church that night because she was ill. She was last seen at 6 p.m. by visiting church members. The fire may have been intended to cover something far more sinister.